Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've finally gotten Trump's keynote speech from the White House. I would sum it up like this: traitors must be punished. Just now, the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, delivered a speech that friends had been eagerly waiting for and enemies had truly been afraid of. To be honest, I was expecting a longer speech, but Trump only needed 30 minutes. In those 30 minutes, he clearly explained to us as simply as 2 plus 2 what happens to a country that allows elections to be rigged, which actually determine the country's future policy. Whoever can influence the elections, whoever can install their own person as head of state, at the head of the administration, is the real master. But gentlemen, judging by the documents that Trump's people have uncovered, it turns out America has a master. In 2020, China, together with a bunch of globalists and leaders of the Democratic Party of the United States of America, quite a combination, isn't it? Yes, they de facto overthrew the legitimately elected President of the United States of America and put a puppet in the White House. This puppet didn't know where he was, confused his wife with his sister, fell on stage, climbed the stairs to the plane, and fell twice in one go, I remember, and would just suddenly fall while standing. This puppet didn't understand where he was. And on her behalf, they wrote 8,000 pardons for people who, in my opinion, should spend many years in prison, maybe even for life. And on behalf of this puppet, China dictated to the United States of America the policy it wanted the United States to follow. What do you think? Did they always take our interests into account? Or did our interests matter to them as much as last year's snow? Well, let's start with what's happening in the country today. Trump said that no democratic state can survive without collapsing if its electoral system is taken over by an enemy, an opponent, or even just one of the parties involved in the election. That's called a one-party system, right? Today, Trump said, we are declassifying thousands of documents that previously no one except those with clearance and those who were checking these documents have seen. Some of these documents were found in the basements of the FBI. In CIA warehouses, they were hidden and stacked in such a way, and some of them were prepared for destruction so that no one from the new administration would ever find them, God forbid. We were lucky, Trump said. Either the people who were hiding them were incompetent, or among those who were ordered to destroy or hide them, there were some decent people. But in the documents that were found, there were some bombshells, real shocking information. The first thing that amazed us was how well the CIA and other intelligence agencies knew that China was operating in our cyberspace, said Trump. They stole more than 20 million profiles of American voters. Can you even imagine the scale of that? That means they had the opportunity to influence them by adapting to them. And no one was stopping them from doing it. Well, and from those who were supposed to stop them. It should be said right away that by not stopping them, they were actually helping them, right? If you can stop them but you don't, it means you're helping them. Can you imagine what it means to have 200 million people about whom everything possible is known? Their emotions, their interests, their views. They were overwhelmed with information. Information, or rather propaganda from China. And they themselves had no idea that this was propaganda or that it was coming from China. The second thing that surprised us, said Trump, was that we found more than 280,000 people who had long been dead or illegal immigrants listed as voters. But not only were they listed, they also turned out to be active. It seems like they crawled in from the cemetery, people who were given ballots, or they sent ballots straight from the cemetery, and someone was collecting them at the cemetery and delivering them to the Democratic Party officials sitting at the collection points. Why weren't they checked? Who organized all of this? So, he said, we already have some information and we're working on it. that 280,000 is not the final number. Most of the states which he said could be called Democratic, well, meaning the governors and the leadership there are Democratic, yes, they refuse to show the voter list to the federal authorities for verification. Formally, they're not required to do this. Here, it's a matter for the states, yes. But informally speaking, it immediately makes you think that they're afraid of something. They're afraid that we, as Trump said, might find something there. Today, I can say one thing. This is just a supposition. I'm referring to Trump here. It's just a supposition. If we found 280,000 and we only searched in a small part of the states, then it seems that if we get to the rest of the lists, we will find, at the very least, millions of people who shouldn't be on those lists. How many of them actually voted? I'm just speaking for myself here, I don't know. But even if just one of them voted, that's already 1,000,000%, more than we can allow. We're told that the number of those who cheated is less than the number needed to change the results of the vote. Personally, this is just my opinion, ladies and gentlemen. I'll get back to Trump. I'll say that I'm back to talking about Trump. Yes, I have a different approach. First of all, I believe that if you found 100, it's quite possible that 10,000 haven't been found. And secondly, if 100 cheated, it means there's a loophole through which we can be deceived. And this loophole needs to be closed, sealed up. And thirdly, in our country, voting is, well, a sacred duty, yes. It's not just a figure of speech. Every person's vote is valuable and matters. If someone comes from outside, an illegal immigrant, or crawls in from the cemetery, yes, and votes just like that, before a citizen of our country has voted, it means they've nullified that vote. There's a term for that. Nullified, erase the citizen's vote. And we cannot allow that. Because even though I personally believe that democracy is a very flawed, bad, and ineffective system of governance, nevertheless, if we already have democracy, then we have no right to allow this until we change it to something else. All the documents, said Trump, now I'm back to Trump, have already been released, and overnight they will be posted on our website, that is whitehouse.gov. Whitehouse.gov? Well, whitehouse.gov, yes. In addition, tomorrow the Department of Homeland Security will hold a briefing for journalists where they will be shown the main documents and explained what and where to look for. We don't want anyone to think that we're making something up, said Trump. We're not making anything up. Everything I say is 1,000% true. And most importantly, said Trump, I'm not calling on my fellow party members to rise up against the other party. I'm calling on Republicans, Democrats, Independents, everyone who votes or doesn't vote, everyone who believes or doesn't believe in my party, or in me, to immediately start demanding from your representatives, members of Congress, senators, that they immediately pass it through the Senate, a law under which any person, not necessarily a Republican, just any person who registers to vote must prove that they are a citizen. And when they come to vote, they are required to prove that it's really them, that it's actually them. In addition, it is necessary to immediately cancel everything, so to speak, all mail-in voting, except, of course, for those people who have notified that they are going on vacation, or have said that they will be in another place for work, or are sick, or for some other reason cannot come. But they are required to do it the way it is done, well, in most countries. You are required either to show up or you are required to register. Now no one has the right to bring in someone else's ballots. Oh, my neighbor asked me to deliver them. I brought 120 with me and then they come 4, 5, 10 times every day. And just bring them and drop them in the box. A bag, a box. We don't know who filled them out. We don't know if this person really got them from where he said he got them. We must return from the status of a banana republic to the civilized world, where our republic and our democratic system of government work together and have given, and so far have given, excellent results. So far. Today, those who are trying to turn us into a third world country want to undo all the progress that we have achieved over 250 years. That's right, yes. What China did in our cyberspace and in our elections in 2018 is the biggest interference in the elections of any country in the world, said Trump. So, the first group of documents that will appear on the White House website are documents that will show and prove that China interfered, not like Russia. Yes, this whole story with Russia, maybe Russia interfered, but for a different reason, interfered in our elections with the purpose of to prevent Trump from being reelected. And with Russia, we know that they interfered in the elections to sow doubt, that's for sure, 100%. We have all the evidence of that. Yes, and it was done at the very moment when the White House was shouting that they were fighting for Trump, yes. The second group, another group. The second group of documents is confirmation of how the heads of security agencies and former White House employees were hiding things. This information and much more from the country. All kinds of tactics were used, including threats against people who knew something and could tell the public. And yet, as Trump said, there were honest, brave people who turned to Congress, specifically to the Republican leadership, knowing that the Democrats would immediately give them up, despite all the whistleblower laws, yes. And they will face all those dangers they were warned about. The heads of the security services and agencies, now we're talking about Biden's people, yes, had all the information and never turned to Congress, which they were required to do according to their job descriptions, duties, constitutional obligations, and the rules of the three branches of government. I said Trump instructed the U.S. Attorney General to hand over these cases for review. And if it turns out that the laws have been violated, we have an absolute sense, I said, that the laws have been violated, and not just one, then to initiate legal proceedings against these individuals. They betrayed our country. They betrayed you and me. Jointly, to make it clear, the Communist Party of China and the Democratic Party of the United States of America worked to discredit the administration of the incumbent elected President Trump. Continuation. And they also tried to prevent any evidence from being found that in 2018, during the midterm elections, as well as in 2020 during the general elections, there were any violations or interference, both from external enemies and from internal enemies of American democracy. One of the statements that struck me the most in Trump's speech was the story about how the Chinese, these are the Chinese. It's astonishing. It's simply astonishing. This is already beyond schizophrenia, I don't know, something else. The Chinese started tracking which American journalists write especially vicious articles about Trump. And they started paying for their work and articles and encouraging them to write more so that they wouldn't waste time earning money elsewhere, teaching or doing something else. No. Here's the money, write articles. In other words, China actively helped journalists who especially hated Trump to focus specifically on this as much as possible and as well as possible. That is, on television, radio, and the internet, to smear Trump as much as possible and as nastily as possible. The dirtier it was, as I understand it, the more money they got. I didn't understand, so from Trump's statement, did these journalists know who was paying them or not? But I think we'll find that out soon as well. But in itself, this is absolutely shocking. Shocking. I'm sure it will be confirmed by documents. The second thing that struck me was the report that the CIA had information that China was printing a huge number of illegal ballots for the U.S. elections and was sending them into our country. Do you understand what that means? It means that in any state, in any district, someone had a stack of copies that were absolutely identical to the American ballot. And when it was time for the results to come in, someone would check and say, we're short of what's needed to win. Our candidate needs, let's say, 11,000 more ballots to win, right? They would have someone, maybe volunteers or people paid to do it. Sometimes volunteers get paid too, right? So he would tell those counting to count slowly, to keep making mistakes. to drag out the process. And during that time, 11,000 ballots would be filled in. When there was little time, they would just write Biden and that's it, nothing else. They didn't do anything else. There are many things, Congress, local elections, judges, but no, just Biden, that's it. And then from the so-called back entrance, they brought them in, stuffed them into the ballot boxes, then recounted, and then said, oh, Biden won, look, 94% against however many percent, right? Sorry, 49.8 against 49.2. Well, and the third story that amazed me is that, according to CIA documents, at a number of internal meetings in the White House, what we call a presidential briefing, it's not just about the president being there. Presidential administrations hold briefings, and presidents often attend. So the person who conducted these briefings ordered the security agencies not to tell anything to either journalists or the American public, so that this information about China's activities, as well as the activities of the Democratic Party leadership, would never reach the ears of the voters. Impressive. Continuing, about Obama. So it was said about Obama that during Biden's administration, he was the one running the country. From the shadows, so to speak, yes, something we weren't told about. And that absolutely everyone knew about it. Everyone knew, so who was in the White House, but the one in charge wasn't in the White House, not the cleaning staff. Maybe the cleaning staff knew, maybe not, we don't know. Trump's claim that numerous, analysts wrote invoices, reports. Reports, memos, reports, yes. To all government institutions, that electronic voting machines simply invite hackers, both domestic and foreign, to change the voting results. Well, that didn't sound like news to us at all. Right, yes? There, understood. So if something is connected to the internet, no matter what kind of protection is in place, it can be accessed. Theoretically. Theoretically, it's possible, so it's possible. Whether it's with the help of someone who is near the machine and tweaks or does something, or without any help, I don't know. Both from the inside and from the outside. And there have already been plenty of cases when this happened, not without the help of Democratic Party leaders, both in the states themselves and in Washington. In addition, the CIA and FBI reported to the White House that China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran were hacking a whole range of U.S. computer systems, including electoral ones. Well, and this information was suppressed and barred from being shared to the media and the people. The key is that we don't hear about it, right? The question is, why does the Democratic Party of the United States of America resist and continue to resist election fraud investigations? For example, Trump talked about the elections in Michigan. In 2020, the police went there for a completely different reason. To the Democratic, Party Committee, the Michigan Democratic Party, right? Let's say, right? The police, having gone in there for some other reason, were completely stunned and called the FBI. They discovered warehouses of unregistered ballots there. Some of them were already filled out without names or surnames. I mean, can you even imagine this level? In other words, it wasn't just one or two people cheating. That's dozens, maybe even hundreds of people who were involved in crimes against their own country. Easily. And they calmly took part in this, and then, of course, at the police station they cried and said they didn't know anything, or that they were afraid they'd be fired or something like that, right? Well, really, this is what people are willing to take part in for a penny, so to speak. Or maybe not even for a penny. Maybe. Because being one of their own, I don't know, so that their own people wouldn't kick them out. And for that, they are ready to sell the future of their country, their children's lives today, their honor, their conscience, and everything else along with it, right? Probably for them, honor, conscience, and morality are just words that have nothing to do with their lives. To them, these words aren't even concepts, just some silly words someone made up, and they don't need to pay any attention to them, like the word pumpernickel. Yeah, who even knows what that is? I know what it is, but others don't, so they ignore it. What do you think happened to this case and these people when the FBI in Michigan handed it over to the FBI headquarters in Washington? You guessed it. Nothing. With those who committed the crime, nothing. What happened to those who uncovered this crime, we don't know. But it seems that they kept silent. As they used to say when I was a kid, they were as silent as fish. And why they kept silent, we can only guess. Friends, Trump said, in order to prevent all of this from happening, to put an end to it once and for all, we need to do a few very simple things that I can count on the fingers of one hand. The first and most important thing is that the number of people eligible to vote in America should be exactly that number, and it shouldn't increase due to illegals or anyone else. Second, only living citizens, U.S. citizens, are the ones who have the right to vote. You can live in any state, but you must be a U.S. citizen. Second, the voter must come to the polling station and show that he is who he says he is, or she is who she says she is. Today, you can even say it is it. Third, only those people who really, for some reason, cannot come to vote should request and receive the right to send in a ballot and not come to the polling station. But this is an exceptional case. Moving business trips. Yes, we shouldn't completely rule out the possibility that one person... I apologize. I meant to say we need to completely rule out the possibility of one person collecting ballots from somewhere. I'm not sure if it's from a cemetery, house, or nursing home. That's it. What should we do with them? He filled them out himself, signed them himself, and brought them in. And he said, here I have 100, 200, 500, 1,000, 1,300 people who asked me to bring these along the way, and I brought them. You either come in person or you vote absentee and send your ballot by mail. And finally, prohibit extending the elections for any number of days. If there is an election day, as stated in the Constitution, then you can either send your ballot by mail or you are required to come and vote on Election Day. If you didn't have time in the 2 years between elections to get your document or to correct your last name or to replace a photo that fell off, right? That means you don't want to vote, or you don't really want to vote. That means you don't care about your right and duty. Well, decide for yourself whether it's a right or a duty. If for some reason you don't have it, and you couldn't get proof that you're a citizen in the 2 years between elections, then that means you don't need to vote. That means it's not important to you if you don't have money for it. No. Well, then the government covers all the costs for reissuing or obtaining these documents. It's very simple. When you go to the bank, they ask you for documents. When you open an account at that same bank, they ask you for documents, usually 2. When you buy a plane ticket or board, no. To be continued. When you come to get a vaccination, an injection, or just to get medicine, they ask you for documents. It's hard to believe that there are millions of people who don't fly on planes, don't take trains, don't go to banks, don't buy medicine, and don't go to doctors. It's terribly difficult. But if these people exist and they live a life completely separate from what's going on in our country, then maybe they don't even need to vote. They should ask themselves, if none of this interests me, why should I vote and take part in this if I don't want to participate in it? Trump concluded by saying that every U.S. citizen should pick up the phone right now and call their representatives in both Congress and the Senate and tell whoever picks up the phone or leave a message on the answering machine, I want you to vote for the Save America Act. I want America to be saved. I don't want America to become a third world country. I don't want America to be run by China. I don't want America to be run by someone half-witted. I don't know how else to put it, Biden, right? Well, let's just say Biden.
Yeah, ну скажем, так сказать.
You couldn't call him half-witted. He wasn't crazy or half-witted. He clearly had Alzheimer's, in my opinion, although of course I'm not a doctor to say that. He had some kind of senile madness. Oh, not half-wittedness, but madness, right? Who pushed him through as our president? How could this even happen? And how could it happen that someone just took him down? Well, I mean, someone just said, no, that's it. He won't be running anymore. How can he not run? This time the people voted for him to run in the elections, right? No, someone said. Was it China who said that? Maybe China did say it? How would I know, right? After that, Nancy Pelosi would call and say, "That's it, you're not running anymore." How am I not running? People voted for me. To hell with them. And that's it. By the way, I completely agree with Trump. This is a mess. It shouldn't go on like this. That's it. I agree with him pretty much 100%. Or as my granddaughter said, she was about 8 or 9 years old at the time, she asked, "How many percent can you have?" I agree with him that much. Ladies and gentlemen, this speech by Trump was made with 3 ideas in mind. We're already moving toward the end. First, it's so that our country doesn't become Zimbabwe. We need to make sure that the right to vote belongs only to citizens of the United States of America. Second, Trump has started his election campaign, which will culminate in the party convention right before the November elections. Never before has any party in America gathered before the midterm elections. This is the first time. So Trump's words about handing over the cases against numerous Obama and Biden accomplices to the prosecutor's office meant the beginning of the hunt for hyenas. The Democrats, of course, will now start calling this revenge. Well, as for what they did to Trump and his aides, they seem to have forgotten to tell us that it was disgusting. But what Trump and his people are doing now, those are crimes, apparently, that we know about. And before, there just wasn't any evidence. We'll try to take it to court. And do it based on actual materials, not just like, let's go to Trump and try to find some papers. Maybe we'll find something interesting. There was no evidence, but now it looks like there is. And third, Trump spoke about America the way he should, like a man who is proud of it. Most Americans are proud of their country, and this was a striking contrast between Trump, the Republicans, today's White House, and those people who represent the alternative to the Republican Party. They are called the Democrats. Some of them have already become socialist Democrats or democratic socialists. I don't remember exactly, but basically Marxists, right? Because today the Democratic Party is in the process of turning into a Marxist party. Marxists who are slowly but surely taking over one of the 2 great parties of the United States of America. Well, to be honest, the Democratic Party itself is to blame for this. Tomorrow we will listen to a briefing from the security agencies. I think we will have a lot more very interesting information. So stay tuned. By the way, if you want to get information on time, make sure to subscribe. And just as importantly, hit the bell. So what is the bell and why do you need it? I've already talked about this. When you subscribe, it means you've told YouTube, or rather the algorithm, His Majesty the algorithm, that you would in principle like to watch this channel. But what does YouTube do? It sends notifications to those who hit the bell and watches how they react. Then, based on their response, it continues sending notifications to everyone else. So you subscribed, but you might not get notifications if only a few people hit the bell, or if only a few of those who hit the bell actually watched, or something like that. So, gentlemen, first of all, subscribe. If you haven't already, hit the bell. That's it. Now, Trump finished by saying that every U.S. citizen should take action right now and call Congress and their representatives, right? And say, I want you to vote for the Save America Act. I hope you will do the same as well. That you will pick up the phone right now, find it on the internet, anywhere, it's easy. Yes, you can use AI, artificial intelligence, or you can just ask Google, who is my representative in the Senate and Congress. They'll ask you for your zip code. You give it, and you'll immediately get their names and their phone numbers, and how to contact them and everything else. Call them. Just call and leave a message. They read it and count it later. And based on the volume of these messages, they think to themselves, this must be important for the re-election. A lot of people could get upset with me if I don't do what they want. Please do it. Well, that's all, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. See you soon. And of course, we'll keep following the developments that Trump started today. And let's hope that the climax, which will happen at the Republican Party convention, will come when a huge number of people realize how wrong this is. to hand over the control of our country to China, what's it called? The Communist and Democratic Republic, and along with it, China's henchman, which is called the Democratic Party of the United States of America. Goodbye. To be continued.